The courtroom was silent except for the faint shuffle of papers and the occasional tapping of a gavel. Judge Morgan, a stern woman with a reputation for cutting through confusion and getting to the truth, leaned forward and addressed the room. "Good morning," she began, her voice crisp and commanding. "We are here today in the matter of Williams versus DeLeon. Ms. Williams, you are the plaintiff in this case, correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," replied a woman in her mid-30s, poised and dressed in a formal navy blue suit. Her expression was serious, but her hands clutched a folder tightly. Mum. "Very well," Judge Morgan continued. "And you are here because you are seeking restitution for services that you claim were not delivered as promised?" "That's correct, Your Honor," Ms. Williams said. "I hired Mr. DeLeon to photograph and film a special event, and the final product did not meet the standards or the specifications that were agreed upon. I am seeking a refund of the $500 I paid him for the services." "Thank you. Mr. DeLeon, you are the defendant," Judge Morgan said, turning to a man in his late 20s who sat with a laptop and several memory cards on the table before him. "Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," he replied. His tone was calm but guarded. "I am the photographer and videographer hired by Ms. Williams. Before we dive into the details of the complaint, Ms. Williams, I want you to explain exactly what this event was," Judge Morgan instructed. Ms. Williams took a deep breath. "It's a debutante program and ball," she began, carefully enunciating each word. "We work with high school girls over the course of the school year. We provide workshops in academics, etiquette, and leadership, and we offer scholarships as incentives. At the end of the year, we host a formal ball where the girls are presented." "I see," Judge Morgan said, nodding. "And this organization is a non-profit?" "Yes, ma'am. We are a 501c3 non-profit," Ms. Williams confirmed. "We operate mostly on registration fees from the participants and fundraising events." "Registration fees?" Judge Morgan's brow furrowed. "And how much does each participant pay?" "Last year it was $400 per girl," Ms. Williams replied. "And how many girls were in the program last year?" "We had 4, Ms. Williams said, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. Judge Morgan paused, making a note. "So you hired Mr. DeLeon to photograph and videotape this ball. How much did you pay him?" $500, Ms. Williams said firmly. "And you are seeking this money back because you claim the work was unsatisfactory?" Judge Morgan asked. "Yes, Your Honor. The still photographs were supposed to be presented with a winter wonderland backdrop, but the final images we received used only a plain green screen background. Additionally, the video footage was dark, blurry, and poorly lit." Judge Morgan leaned back slightly, looking directly at Mr. DeLeon. "Is this accurate?" she asked. Mr. DeLeon nodded. "Your Honor, I did attend the event and take the photographs and videos as agreed. The issue with the backdrop was due to a timing problem with the delivery. The backdrop was supposed to be purchased in advance, but it arrived too late, and Ms. Williams instructed me to use the green screen instead and edit it digitally later." Judge Morgan raised an eyebrow. "And were you able to do that editing?" "No, Your Honor," he replied. "After taking the pictures, Ms. Williams told me not to post or finalize them online for ordering. The photographs you see here have only been lightly edited through Adobe Lightroom, which improves the basic color and clarity, but they do not yet feature the winter wonderland backdrop." Judge Morgan scribbled in her notebook. "So the issue seems to be about the final product, not the initial photography itself?" "Yes, Your Honor," Mr. DeLeon said. "The photographs themselves were taken professionally. The digital editing process was interrupted due to Ms. Williams' instructions." Judge Morgan turned back to Ms. Williams. "Did you understand that the backdrop was being handled digitally after the event?" she asked, her tone sharp but fair. Ms. Williams hesitated. "I was told it would be done, yes, but I expected it to be completed in the final production that I received. The images we got did not reflect that. It was not what we paid for." "Very well," Judge Morgan said. "Let's move on to the video. You have clips?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ms. Williams said, handing over a USB drive. This particular clip shows one of the dances at the ball. As you can see, the lighting is very poor, the image is dark, and there is significant motion blur. It does not reflect the quality we were promised. Judge Morgan inserted the drive into her laptop and played the clip. She leaned forward slightly, observing the footage with a critical eye. The room was quiet as the four young girls in formal gowns danced awkwardly under dim lighting. Shadows obscured their faces, and the motion of the dance caused a blur across the frame. "Indeed," Judge Morgan said after a moment. "It is darker than ideal. Mr. DeLeon, what was the lighting setup at this venue?" "The ballroom's lighting was very limited," he explained. "It's not a professional studio. I did the best I could with the equipment on hand, but low light caused motion blur in the moving shots. This was also not highlighted in the contract. The primary focus was on capturing still images." Judge Morgan made another note. "Ms. Williams, were you aware that the venue lighting could affect the video quality?" "I understand that lighting can have an effect," she said, "but I expected professional handling to compensate for that. The stills could have been properly edited to include the backdrop, and the video should have at least been watchable without significant blur and darkness." "Understood," Judge Morgan said. "We will examine both the photographs and the video carefully. At this point, it seems there is disagreement about expectations and execution. I want to hear more about the communications between you two regarding editing, posting, and final delivery of the photos. Ms. Williams, please describe any instructions you gave to Mr. DeLeon after the event." Ms. Williams opened her folder and shuffled through several sheets of paper. "Immediately after the ball, I told him not to post the photos online. We needed time to review them before releasing anything publicly. I also expected him to finalize the editing and replace the green screen with the Winter Wonderland background before providing the final product." "And Mr. DeLeon," Judge Morgan said, "how did you respond to these instructions?" "I informed her that the editing could not be completed immediately due to the hold on posting and her specific request to stop online distribution," he replied. "I was ready to complete the backdrop replacement once she approved it, but she did not provide further instructions after that point." Judge Morgan looked between them. "So the disagreement is partly about timing and partly about expectations of what the final product should be," she summarized. "We will need to examine evidence of communications, contracts, and the final product to determine if there was a breach of agreement or simply a misunderstanding." The courtroom clerk cleared his throat. "Your Honor, all evidence has been submitted for review, including email correspondence, the contract, and the photographs and video files." Judge Morgan nodded. "Very well. Let's proceed with a detailed review of the contract and timeline of events. Ms. Williams, please summarize the key points of the agreement and the schedule that was expected." Ms. Williams straightened her shoulders. "The contract stipulated that Mr. DeLeon would provide both still photography and video coverage of the Debutante ball. The photographs were to be edited to include a Winter Wonderland background, and the video was to be delivered in high-quality digital format suitable for presentation. All deliverables were to be provided within 2 weeks of the event. Payment was $500 for the services, which I paid in advance." "And were any additional fees or optional purchases discussed?" Judge Morgan asked. "Yes, Your Honor," Ms. Williams replied. "Mr. DeLeon was allowed to sell copies of the photographs to the families, but the initial package included the editing and the background replacement. That was non-negotiable. The $500 covered that portion." "Understood," Judge Morgan said. "Mr. DeLeon, please provide your perspective on the agreed terms and the execution of the work." Mr. DeLeon adjusted his laptop. The contract specified coverage and optional sales. The editing process was to occur in 2 stages: initial color and exposure adjustments, and final background replacement. The timing was affected by Ms. Williams' request to halt online processing. I was fully prepared to complete the final stage once she allowed it, but it did not proceed. Judge Morgan tapped her pen. "So we have a contractually defined service and a halt in the process requested by the client. This will be central to determining whether the full $500 refund is warranted." Let's move to examine the evidence in detail, starting with the photographs themselves. Ms. Williams handed the first set of printed photographs to the bailiff, who presented them to the judge. The images displayed the 4 girls in formal dresses standing before a plain green screen. The colors were vivid, but the backdrop was noticeably generic. Judge Morgan studied each photograph carefully. "I see," she murmured. "It is clear that the images are professionally taken, but the winter wonderland effect is missing. Mr. DeLeon, you are able to add that digitally." "Yes, Your Honor. That is within my capacity and standard procedure," he said. "Then the question becomes," Judge Morgan said, leaning back, "whether the failure to deliver the backdrop was due to negligence or simply an incomplete process halted by the client's instructions." The courtroom fell silent as Judge Morgan prepared to move on to the video evidence, signaling that this case was far from straightforward. Both parties knew that the coming testimonies, cross-examinations, and review of communications would determine the outcome. Judge Morgan adjusted her glasses and turned to the bailiff. "Please play the video evidence now. Let's begin with the first clip showing the debutante ball dance." The screen flickered to life. 4 young girls, dressed in flowing gowns of pastel colors, moved across the dance floor. The lighting was dim, casting long shadows, and the camera struggled to keep up with the motion. Faces were partially obscured, and the movement created a noticeable blur. Judge Morgan leaned forward slightly. She said, her tone neutral but sharp. "Mr. DeLeon, you claim this is a result of the venue's lighting and motion. Can you explain why this was not anticipated in your contract or setup?" "Yes, Your Honor," Mr. DeLeon began, standing. "The ballroom lighting was standard for events of this type. I did not have professional stage lighting available. My agreement was to provide coverage and photography. I did not guarantee studio quality video in low light conditions. Still photography was prioritized, and that was delivered." Judge Morgan made a note. "Ms. Williams, do you understand that the limitations in the video may be a result of the venue, not a deficiency in Mr. DeLeon's professional skill?" "Yes, Your Honor," Ms. Williams replied. "I understand the limitations of the venue. However, I expected a professional to adjust for those limitations through camera settings, additional lighting, or post-production enhancement. The videos we received were below professional standards, especially for an event of this significance." "Understood," Judge Morgan said. "Now, Mr. DeLeon, were any additional lighting options or equipment discussed before the event?" "No, Your Honor," he said. "The budget for the event covered $500 for photography and video. Additional lighting would have been an extra expense. I offered suggestions for supplemental lighting, but Ms. Williams declined, stating the venue lighting would suffice." Judge Morgan glanced at Ms. Williams. "Is this accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor," she admitted reluctantly. "I was told there would be extra charges for lighting. I assumed professional skill would suffice with the existing setup. Perhaps that was a misjudgment on my part." The judge nodded. "Very well. Let's move on to the correspondence regarding editing and the backdrop. Ms. Williams, do you have emails or text messages that document your instructions to Mr. DeLeon?" "Yes, Your Honor," she said, reaching into her folder. "Here are emails sent immediately after the event, instructing him not to post images online before approval, and reminding him that the Winter Wonderland backdrop was to be included in the final images." Judge Morgan skimmed the emails. "I see. And Mr. DeLeon, do you have a record of your responses?" "Yes, Your Honor," he replied, opening his laptop. "Here are my replies, indicating that the initial editing was completed, but the background replacement could not proceed until she approved online distribution. I repeatedly asked for clarification, but I received no further instructions." The judge read a few lines aloud. "Per your request, I have completed initial editing and am ready to proceed with background replacement once you authorize posting." She looked up. "Mr. DeLeon, why was this not completed in the final delivery?" "Because Ms. Williams instructed me to halt the process," he said calmly. "Once online distribution was stopped, the workflow for background replacement was paused. I could not proceed without violating her instructions. Judge Morgan tapped her pen against the desk. So there was a clear instruction to stop, and yet Ms. Williams is claiming the final product is deficient. This seems to be a conflict of communication, not necessarily poor workmanship. Ms. Williams interjected. Your Honor, I understand that, but I assumed that the final images would still be delivered, with the backdrop replaced, even if they were not yet posted online. I did not expect the work to be left incomplete. Judge Morgan leaned back, folding her hands. This is a common issue in professional services. Misaligned expectations versus contractual obligations. Mr. DeLeon, did you provide any timeline for completion once online posting was halted? Yes, Your Honor. I informed her that final delivery could only occur once she approved online posting. I waited for confirmation but received none. The judge scribbled a few notes. Let's talk about payment. Ms. Williams, you paid $500 in advance. Was any portion contingent on completion or satisfaction? No, Your Honor. The $500 covered all photography and video services. I expected full delivery, including the backdrop replacement and quality video. Mr. DeLeon responded. The payment covered attendance, coverage, and initial editing. Optional sales were additional. The contract does not specify a guarantee for final backdrop replacement under halted conditions. Judge Morgan paused, considering. We will examine the contract in detail later. Now, I want to hear about the girl's experience. Ms. Williams, did the participants or their families express dissatisfaction with the images or video? Yes, Your Honor, she said. Several parents noticed that the backdrop was missing and commented that the videos were dark. They were disappointed because this was a formal event, and the images are intended as keepsakes. Mr. DeLeon, were there any complaints communicated to you directly? Yes, Your Honor, he replied. I was informed by Ms. Williams that the images were not satisfactory, but she did not provide an opportunity to complete the editing before filing this claim. Judge Morgan made a note. So there is a window where remediation could have occurred but was not utilized. I will need to factor that into my decision. Now, let's move to the technical aspects of the photographs. Ms. Williams, please describe what you expected in the final images. We expected the 4 girls to be photographed in full formal attire against a winter wonderland background, she explained. The final images should have included the snow effects, winter scenery, and proper color correction. Instead, we received raw images with only minor adjustments. And Mr. DeLeon, is it technically feasible to add the winter wonderland backdrop after initial editing? Yes, Your Honor. It is standard procedure in professional photography to replace green screen backgrounds in post-production. That process takes additional time but is entirely possible. Did you offer to complete that process once the halt on posting was lifted? Judge Morgan asked. Yes, Your Honor, he said. I was ready, but Ms. Williams never authorized the next step. Judge Morgan looked at both parties. This is a case of conflicting expectations and instructions. The photographs are professionally taken. The backdrop replacement is technically feasible, but the client's instructions prevented completion. We will need to examine whether a refund is justified or if this is a matter of miscommunication. The courtroom clerk shuffled papers. Your Honor, the final video clips also show several candid moments during the ball. Should I play those next? Yes, please, Judge Morgan said. I want to review both still and motion evidence thoroughly. The quality, clarity, and lighting will all be relevant in determining whether the work meets reasonable professional standards. The room fell silent as the clerk loaded the next video clip. The 4 girls laughed and danced. A few missteps caught on camera. The lighting again dim and inconsistent. Judge Morgan observed carefully, noting the motion blur and shadows. After the clip ended, she leaned forward. Mr. DeLeon, you claim these issues are due to venue lighting. Were there any alternative methods you could have employed to improve video clarity? Yes, Your Honor, he said. I could have used supplemental lighting or higher ISO settings, but these were either unavailable or would have introduced additional noise. Given the scope and budget, the video represents a reasonable attempt to capture the event. Judge Morgan nodded. Ms. Williams, Do you accept that the technical limitations may have contributed to the video quality? Yes, Your Honor, she replied. But I still expected a professional effort to mitigate those limitations. The end result falls short of what I paid for and what was promised. Judge Morgan paused, considering both sides. Very well. At this point, I believe it is necessary to examine the contract, communications, and all deliverables in detail before making a determination. I will allow both parties to provide additional evidence, including emails, invoices, and alternative footage if available. The gavel tapped sharply. Court is adjourned for the morning session. We will resume after lunch with further cross-examinations and review of evidence. Both parties gathered their documents, exchanging brief, tense glances. Outside the courtroom, whispers among spectators suggested that the case was more complex than a simple refund dispute. Ms. Williams muttered under her breath, "I just want the girls to have beautiful memories of their ball." Mr. DeLeon shook his head quietly. "I did everything I could within the agreed terms." Judge Morgan's eyes followed them as they left. She knew that the afternoon session would require careful analysis and questioning to untangle the web of expectations, communications, and technical limitations. The courtroom reconvened after the lunch recess, and the atmosphere had grown heavier, denser, and more expectant. People who had stepped outside earlier now returned to the benches with renewed curiosity, sensing that the afternoon session would determine the fate of the dispute. Judge Morgan entered with her customary firmness, her black robe rustling like a wave of authority. "Court is now back in session," she announced, taking her seat. "We will continue with cross-examinations and final evidence review. Both parties will have an opportunity to present any remaining information before I issue my ruling." Ms. Williams sat upright, her expression determined but visibly tense. Across the courtroom, Mr. DeLeon set his laptop aside, preparing himself mentally for what promised to be a challenging round of questioning. Judge Morgan turned first to Ms. Williams. "Ms. Williams, you may begin your cross-examination of the defendant." Ms. Williams stood, smoothing her blazer. "Thank you, Your Honor." She approached the stand. "Mr. DeLeon, I want to ask you something very directly. Did you, or did you not, promise me that the Winter Wonderland background would be included in the final photographs?" "Yes, I did," he answered calmly. "As part of the package, background replacement was included." "And did you deliver that?" "I delivered the initial editing," he responded. "Final backdrop replacement was halted based on your request not to post the images online." Ms. Williams narrowed her eyes. "You could have delivered the final images without posting them online. I never told you not to give me the completed product." Mr. DeLeon hesitated. "You told me, not once but twice, not to continue the process until you approved the online posting. My workflow is tied to the online gallery for final orders and selections. So I waited for your approval, which never came. But the initial $500 included the editing, did it not?" Ms. Williams pressed. "It included the time," he said. "But the process requires steps, and halting those steps stops delivery." Judge Morgan interjected. "Ms. Williams, ask clear questions. Mr. DeLeon, provide concise answers." "Yes, Your Honor," both replied. Ms. Williams flipped a page in her folder. "Is it true that you had time, several days, to complete the backdrop replacement before I told you to stop posting?" "Yes," he admitted. "But backdrop editing takes time and cues from client selections. You had not yet chosen which poses would receive the premium edit." Ms. Williams paused, as if absorbing the answer. Then she stepped back. "No further questions at this time, Your Honor." Judge Morgan leaned forward. "Mr. DeLeon, before opposing counsel begins, I want to clarify something. You say your workflow depends on online posting. But does Ms. Williams's instruction to pause posting inherently prevent you from delivering the final edited images to her privately?" He took a deep breath. "No, Your Honor. I could have completed the backdrop edits and delivered them directly. But I was waiting for selection confirmation, which she did not provide. So she halted posting. You halted editing. Neither side took initiative to clarify the next step. Is that accurate?" He nodded reluctantly. Yes, Your Honor. That's accurate. Judge Morgan scribbled a heavy line across her notes. Mr. DeLeon, the judge said. Your turn. He rose slowly. Thank you, Your Honor. He faced Ms. Williams. Ms. Williams, you told me not to post the photos online, correct? Yes, she said firmly. And did you ever tell me to resume posting? No, she admitted. But I assumed you didn't need my instruction to finish the job. He paced slightly. Did you at any point send me a list of selected images for backdrop replacement? No, because I expected all the girls' portraits to have the backdrop. Did we ever discuss that all images would receive that treatment, rather than selected ones? Ms. Williams hesitated. I thought it was understood. So you assumed? Yes. Mr. DeLeon nodded. Your Honor, no further questions. Ms. Williams looked irritated, her jaw clenched. Judge Morgan tapped her gavel lightly. The court has received a written statement from a third-party photography expert regarding the video and still images. I will summarize its contents for the record. She lifted a document. According to the expert, the still photographs taken by Mr. DeLeon are technically sound, with proper composition, focus, and color correction. The lack of backdrop replacement is noted but attributed to incomplete workflow rather than skill deficiency. Ms. Williams lowered her head slightly. Judge Morgan continued. Regarding the video footage, the expert states that low-light conditions in event halls routinely produce motion blur and graininess unless supplemented by additional lighting. The footage is considered acceptable for event coverage photography at the stated budget, though not exemplary. Ms. Williams sighed audibly. Mr. DeLeon remained expressionless. Judge Morgan folded her hands. We will now proceed to closing statements. Ms. Williams, you may begin. Ms. Williams stood and approached the bench. Your Honor, I am not questioning Mr. DeLeon's skill. I am questioning the completion of the service. The girls in my program, only 4, deserved flawless memories of their debutante ball. We paid for a complete product. We received an unfinished one. I believe I am entitled to a refund because the essential element, the winter wonderland backdrop, was never delivered. And the video falls short of what was promised. She returned to her seat. Judge Morgan nodded. Thank you, Mr. DeLeon. He rose with calm determination. Your Honor, I delivered everything within my control. The halt in the workflow was not my decision. Had I been given approval to proceed, the backdrop would have been added. The video captures the event to the best possible extent under the lighting conditions. I fulfilled my obligations. This claim is a result of misunderstanding, not breach. He sat down. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Morgan removed her glasses and placed them slowly on her desk. Her eyes swept over both parties. This case, she began, is a classic example of communication failure, not fraud, not negligence, but misaligned expectations and incomplete instructions. She continued, first, regarding the still photographs. The images were taken professionally. The editing was partially completed. The backdrop was not added due to halted workflow. Both parties share responsibility for the incomplete result. Ms. Williams closed her eyes. Second, regarding the video, the quality is limited by the venue. It is not outstanding, but it is acceptable for the price paid. Mr. DeLeon exhaled softly. Judge Morgan lifted her gavel slightly. My ruling is as follows. Ms. Williams will not receive a full refund. However, because the final deliverables were incomplete, I award her a partial refund of $200. Mr. DeLeon is ordered to deliver the completed version of 4 final photographs with the winter wonderland backdrop within 14 days of this ruling. This resolves the matter. She struck the gavel. Case dismissed. Ms. Williams gathered her folder slowly. She looked relieved, not entirely satisfied, but accepting. At least the girls will get their pictures, she whispered. Mr. DeLeon nodded respectfully. I'll deliver them, and I hope next time we communicate better. There was no bitterness in his tone, just fatigue and closure. Spectators began murmuring as they filed out of the courtroom. Another dispute resolved, another lesson learned. Contracts require clarity, and expectations must be spoken, not assumed. Judge Morgan watched the two part ways. Her courtroom had seen thousands of disagreements, but each held a human story beneath the legal arguments. A story of effort, expectations, mistakes, and resolution. As the doors closed behind the last person, the wooden chamber fell silent again, waiting for the next story to unfold.